The night I died was painted in rain and betrayal. The city slept beneath a storm, the streets gleaming like broken glass under the flicker of red neon. I remember the weight of the night pressing against my skin, heavy and wet, and the taste of metal in the air that whispered of danger. I had known something was wrong long before I saw him, long before I turned the corner into that narrow alley and found Adrian waiting, the man who had once kissed my bruises, now standing there with a gun. He looked like a god carved from guilt and fury, rainwater running down his face like tears he'd never admit to. My breath caught, not from fear but from heartbreak. I had seen that look before, the look of a man who had already decided what must die tonight. The silence between us roared louder than thunder. I took a step closer, the water beneath my shoes rippling like blood. "Adrian," I said softly, voice shaking but steady enough to remind him that I wasn't afraid. "You know I didn't betray you." His jaw tightened, his eyes dark as a storm that refused to break. "They said you did," he replied, voice hollow, distant. "They showed me proof." I laughed then, bitter, cracked, broken, because I knew the truth wouldn't matter anymore. Power had already swallowed him whole. Love couldn't survive where loyalty was currency and trust was a weapon. When he lifted the gun, my heart didn't race. It broke, quietly. I remembered his touch, his promises, the nights when he whispered he'd kill anyone who hurt me, never realizing he'd be the one to pull the trigger. Lightning split the sky, a flash of silver light, and then came the sound, a single shot, sharp and final. The world tilted, spinning in slow motion. I felt the burn in my chest, warm and spreading, and my knees buckled beneath me. The rain caught me before the ground did. The world blurred, his silhouette fading into the mist, his name echoing somewhere between my heartbeat and the thunder. For a moment, I thought I saw tears in his eyes, but maybe it was only rain. I wanted to hate him. I wanted to curse him. But as the darkness crept closer, all I could think of was the way he used to smile in the half-light, the way his laugh had felt like safety. My lips parted, trying to form his name, but only blood came out, red, thick, and final. The city lights began to dim, each one dying like a star. My last thought was not of vengeance or rage, but of the warmth I once found in his arms. And then silence. But death wasn't the end for me. Somewhere between heartbeat and nothingness, I heard a voice, calm, unfamiliar, pulling me back. Hands dragged me from the alley, through the rain, through the cold. I wanted to scream, to ask why, but my body was nothing but pain and memory. When I woke, it wasn't in heaven or hell, but in a dim room filled with the smell of smoke and antiseptic. My chest was bandaged, my reflection unrecognizable. The man who stood beside my bed was a stranger with a scar down his cheek. "You should have died," he said, his voice low, almost admiring. "But maybe death didn't want you yet." That was the night Riven died, and something else was born in his place. Something colder, something sharper. They called me Leo now. A name without a past, without love, without weakness. I buried the boy who once believed in Adrian Vale and carved a new vow in his place. I would rise from the shadows he created. I would make him see what it feels like to lose everything he loved. He thought he killed me. He didn't. He just turned me into his ghost. And soon he'll wish he had pulled that trigger twice. The world after death doesn't come with light. It begins in silence. Heavy, suffocating silence, where every breath feels borrowed and every heartbeat sounds like a lie. When I opened my eyes again, I wasn't Riven anymore. I was a ghost hiding inside another man's skin. The smell of antiseptic and steel filled the air. The room was dim, walls concrete, no windows, only a single bulb swinging from the ceiling. For a while I didn't move. I just stared at the ceiling and tried to remember how it felt to be human. Days blurred. My body healed, but my soul didn't. I would wake from nightmares of the gunshot, gasping, my hands clutching at the phantom wound in my chest. Sometimes, I swore I could still feel his touch, Adrian's touch, warm and trembling against my skin before he pulled the trigger. That memory became both my poison and my fire. The man who saved me called himself Darius. A shadow in a tailored coat, eyes like winter, and a voice that carried more truth than comfort. He belonged to a secret organization that dealt in silence. Assassins, spies, informants, people who lived in the dark to control the world that danced in the light. "You were supposed to die," he said one night, standing in the doorway as I tried to sit up. "But something about you felt useful." Useful? I laughed bitterly. "I'm a corpse with a pulse." Darius smirked, unbothered. "Corpses make good ghosts, and ghosts are the most dangerous kind of weapon." That was how it began. My rebirth, not into life but into vengeance. They rebuilt me piece by piece. My old scars were erased, my features altered just enough to hide the boy I used to be. The mirror no longer showed Riven. Soft eyes, warm smile, love-struck fool. It showed Leo, sharp jaw, cold stare, and a calmness that could slit a throat. I was made new but not whole. Training was brutal. They taught me how to kill without hesitation, how to think 3 moves ahead, how to make pain look like mercy. I learned to fight in silence, to disappear in crowds, to shoot with precision that made my own death feel like irony. Every drop of sweat, every scar, was a reminder of the night he left me to die. And every time my body hit the floor, Darius would simply say, "Get up, Leo. Revenge doesn't wait for the weak." But at night, when everyone else slept, I sat alone in the dark. I traced the scar over my heart, feeling the echo of the bullet that once broke me. Sometimes, I wondered if Adrian ever thought of me, if he ever saw my face in his dreams, covered in blood and rain. The thought both comforted and cursed me, because even now, part of me still wanted to believe he hadn't meant it, that maybe the man I loved was trapped beneath the monster he became. Took 3 years before I was ready. By then, Leo had replaced Riven completely. I had mastered every weapon, every trick, every mask. My voice was steady, my hands no longer shook. I was no longer someone's lover. I was a weapon wearing a heartbeat. Darius handed me a file one evening. Black cover, no name, only a red seal. "This is your last test," he said. "Complete it, and you'll have everything you need to finish your own story." I opened it. My fingers froze. Inside was a photograph, a familiar face staring back. Adrian Vale, older, colder, still beautiful in that cruel way. His empire had grown. He now ruled the city's underground like a god of smoke and gold. Darius watched me carefully. "You know him." It wasn't a question. I closed the file. "I did," I said. "And one day soon, he'll know me again. Only this time, I'll be the last thing he sees." He smiled faintly, satisfied. "Then, Leo, welcome back to the world of the living." But he was wrong. I wasn't among the living anymore. I was the shadow that crawled out of a grave with a single purpose, to make Adrian. And as lightning cracked the horizon, somewhere across the city, Adrian Vale looked up from his glass of whiskey. His hand suddenly trembling, his heartbeat faltering for reasons he couldn't explain. The dead had begun to walk again. The city hadn't changed. It was still built on blood, lies, and gold. The kind of place where power had a price and love was a luxury no one could afford. I stood at the edge of the skyline, watching the neon lights flicker through the mist, the hum of life below me feeling almost familiar. 3 years. 3 years since I had bled out in an alley beneath that same rain. 3 years since Adrian Vale shot me and walked away without looking back. Now I was coming home, not as Riven, but as Leo, the ghost he unknowingly created. My reflection in the glass tower windows was unrecognizable. The soft, trusting boy was gone. In his place stood a man molded from shadows. Sharp suit, colder eyes, a face that could smile and lie in the same breath. I'd spent months studying every move Adrian made, every deal he signed, every enemy he silenced. He was a king now, feared, respected, untouchable. But even kings have weaknesses, and Adrian's greatest weakness had always been me. The plan was simple: get close, earn his trust, and destroy him from the inside. Darius's contacts forged my new identity flawlessly. Leo Kane, a strategist known for rebuilding broken syndicates. The perfect bait for a man who craved control. By the time I walked through the glass doors of Vale Industries, the guards already had my name on their list. The elevator ride to the top floor felt endless. My pulse was steady, but inside, every memory was screaming. When the doors opened, his scent hit me first. A mix of smoke, leather, and danger. Then I saw him, Adrian Vale, sitting behind a desk of black marble. His gaze colder than the night he killed me. He looked older, sharper, his suit tailored to perfection, his expression unreadable. The man I once loved was now an empire wearing human skin. "Mr. Kane," he greeted without standing, voice calm and deep, the same tone that used to whisper my name against my neck. "I've heard you're good at fixing problems." I smiled. Not too much, just enough to hide the storm behind my eyes. "I don't fix problems," I said quietly. "I erase them." Something flickered in his gaze, curiosity or perhaps something older. A spark of recognition he couldn't place. He gestured for me to sit. "Then maybe you're exactly what I need." For the next hour, we talked business. Market territories, alliances, numbers, but beneath every word was tension. A silent game neither of us acknowledged. Adrian studied me like a puzzle he couldn't solve. I kept my voice calm, measured, my every move calculated. Yet, every time he leaned forward, every time his eyes met mine, I felt the ghost of his touch. I hated that part of me still responded, that my body still remembered the rhythm of his breath. When the meeting ended, he stood and extended his hand. His palm was warm, the same warmth I remembered from the night he held me before he pulled the trigger. "Welcome to the Vale Syndicate, Leo," he said. "Let's see if you're as good as they claim." As our hands touched, a chill ran through me. I looked at him and smiled. Not as Riven, not as the boy who loved him, but as the man who would end him. "You'll find out soon enough, Mr. Vale." That night, back in my apartment, I sat by the window, watching the city lights burn like dying stars. I could still feel the phantom sting of his gaze on me. The game had begun, and I was already walking the line between vengeance and obsession. I told myself it was just revenge, cold, necessary, final. But deep down, a quieter voice whispered the truth I didn't want to hear. That no matter how much I wanted to destroy him, a part of me still wanted him to see me, to recognize the boy he left to die. And maybe, when he finally did, I'd make him wish he hadn't. Power had always looked good on Adrian Vale. Even when I was riven, before the blood, before the betrayal, I'd watched him move through the world like it owed him everything. Now, seeing him again through the eyes of Leo Kane, I understood why men feared him, why entire empires bent to his will. He was no longer just the heir to a crime dynasty. He was the king himself, untouchable, unbreakable, and terrifyingly calm. He ruled the underworld the way a storm rules the sea. Quiet on the surface, deadly underneath. Every deal, every whisper, every drop of blood that hit the concrete belonged to him. He didn't raise his voice to command. His presence alone was enough to make men bow. He'd traded mercy for control, warmth for precision. The Adrian I once knew, the man who used to hum softly while tracing the scars on my wrist, was buried somewhere beneath the weight of his crown. And yet, as I stood by his side during a late-night meeting, something in his eyes faltered. For just a second, the mask slipped. He looked at me, really looked, and the air in the room changed. His gaze lingered a heartbeat too long, like he was trying to remember something his mind refused to accept. "Leo," he said, my name low and deliberate, testing it on his tongue. "You seem to know how I think before I speak. How long did you say you've been in this line of work?" I met his stare evenly. "Long enough to understand men like you." He smirked, but there was no amusement behind it. "Men like me. Powerful," I said, my voice smooth but sharp. "And lonely." The silence that followed was almost dangerous. His jaw tightened, not in anger, but restraint. For a moment, I saw it again. The flicker of pain, the ghost of someone he used to be. I wanted to rip through that composure, to make him remember the night he killed me, to see if his heart still bled beneath all that marble. But instead, I stood still, patient, controlled. Revenge wasn't a fire. It was ice, slow and suffocating. When the meeting ended, he dismissed everyone but me. I felt his gaze at my back as I gathered the files. "You move like someone who's lived here before," he said quietly. "Like this city already knows your footsteps." I froze for half a breath before forcing a polite smile. Maybe I'm just good at blending in. He leaned back in his chair, watching me like a hunter watching a shadow. "No," he said softly. "You don't blend in, Leo. You stand out, like a ghost I can't forget." His words hit harder than I wanted them to. For a second, my heart stumbled. Not because of fear, but because the man who had once destroyed me could still unknowingly reach into the part of me that wasn't dead yet. I left his office that night with his words echoing in my head. A ghost I can't forget. He didn't know how right he was. Back in my room, I poured myself a drink, staring at my reflection in the window. The rain had started again, soft and steady, just like that night. I ran a hand over my chest, where the bullet once tore through me. I thought I had buried Riven for good, but maybe ghosts never stayed buried, especially the ones born from love and hate intertwined. Adrian Vale was beginning to remember me. Not in name, not in memory, but in instinct. His soul was stirring, recognizing what his mind had killed. And that was exactly what I wanted. Because to destroy him completely, I needed him to feel. And for that, I'd have to let him fall in love with me all over again. Sleep had never been kind to Adrian Vale. His nights were built on gunfire and broken promises, but lately, they had begun to bleed into something else. Something softer, haunting, unfamiliar. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw the same image. Rain falling through a narrow alley, a body in his arms, blood staining his hands. A whisper, "You promised me you'd never hurt me." Then lightning, a gunshot, and silence. He would wake up gasping, his heartbeat thundering in the dark, the taste of guilt heavy on his tongue. And the scent, that was the worst of it. A faint trace of sandalwood and storm air. It followed him everywhere now, in the halls, in his office, in the quiet moments between meetings. It was the scent of a ghost he'd buried years ago. The scent of Riven. He told himself it was just the stress, that grief played tricks on memory. But when Leo walked into his office one morning, that same scent hit him again. Faint but unmistakable. Adrian's hand tightened around his pen. He watched Leo move across the room, the way he tilted his head, the curve of his mouth when he spoke. It was infuriating. Every gesture, every tone. Something about this man kept pulling at the locked doors of his past. "Are you always this tense, Mr. Vale?" Leo asked casually, placing the new report on his desk. His voice carried that same inflection Riven once had, soft mockery wrapped in warmth. Adrian's gaze snapped to him. "You remind me of someone." Leo smiled, small, knowing, dangerous. "Someone you miss? Or someone you regret?" The words hit him like a blade. Adrian didn't answer. He couldn't. Instead, he stood, walking past him toward the window, pretending to study the city skyline. "I don't waste time on the past," he said quietly. "That's strange," Leo replied, stepping closer. "Because the past seems to waste a lot of time on you." For a long, suffocating moment, neither spoke. Only the sound of the rain tapping against the glass filled the silence, the same rhythm as that night years ago. Adrian's reflection caught Leo's eyes in the window, and for an instant, it wasn't Leo he saw. It was Riven, pale, trembling, beautiful in his pain. The man he'd shot under a burning sky. Adrian turned sharply, his voice low. "Who are you, really?" Leo's smile didn't falter. "Someone who knows how to make you remember." That night, Adrian didn't go home. He stayed in his office, staring at the empty glass where Leo's reflection had been. Every word, every look from that man gnawed at him, dragging him back into the one memory he tried to bury beneath a mountain of power and sin. He poured himself another drink, but it didn't burn enough to chase away the ghost in his mind. Meanwhile, Leo stood outside on the terrace, rain soaking his clothes, a faint smirk playing at his lips. The plan was working. He'd seen the flicker in Adrian's eyes. Confusion, fear, longing. The storm was stirring inside him again. "You're starting to remember me, aren't you?" he whispered into the rain. "Good. Remember what you did. Remember how I died in your arms." He closed his eyes, letting the water wash over him, but the satisfaction he expected never came. Instead, something heavier settled in his chest, something that felt dangerously close to sorrow. For a moment, he almost wished Adrian wouldn't remember, because once he did, there'd be no turning back. The night was supposed to be routine, a simple exchange at the docks. But routine didn't exist in Adrian Vale's world. It took only seconds for the deal to unravel into chaos. Bullets sliced through the rain, metal screamed against concrete, and the air reeked of gunpowder and betrayal. Adrian moved like the storm itself, precise, lethal, unflinching. Every motion of his gun was a statement. Control, dominance, order. But even kings bleed when the world decides to remind them they're mortal. A shot rang out, not his. Pain bloomed across his shoulder, sharp and hot. He stumbled back behind a crate, his breath coming ragged, blood soaking through his tailored suit. The rain didn't stop. It never stopped. Through the haze he saw movement, a shadow quick and fluid. The man he'd once thought was just another strategist now moved like a ghost through fire. Leo. Leo's knife flashed once. Clean, quiet, and a man fell before he could even scream. Another raised his gun, but Leo was faster, tackling him, twisting his wrist until bones snapped. His movements weren't the kind of training a strategist had. They were the kind of instincts born from death. When the last of the attackers hit the ground, Leo turned, eyes wild under the streetlight, chest heaving. Then he saw Adrian slumped against the crate. "Boss?" he said, voice rough, almost breaking through the act. Adrian tried to move but hissed in pain. "It's just a graze," he lied. Leo was already kneeling beside him, rain dripping from his hair as his hands pressed over the wound. "You'll bleed out if I let you handle it." Their faces were inches apart. Adrian's breath ghosted over Leo's lips, warm despite the storm. Leo could smell the iron in the air, the faint cologne Adrian wore, that same cold, intoxicating scent from the past. "Don't touch me," Adrian growled. "Then die," Leo murmured back, not moving his hands. Their eyes locked. Two predators, circling something they couldn't name. For a second, everything else disappeared. The rain, the blood, the sound of men dying. There was only this, the touch, the heat, the unbearable familiarity. Adrian's fingers suddenly caught Leo's wrist. "You fight like you've been trained to kill me," he said, voice low and dangerous. Leo's heartbeat stuttered. "Wouldn't that be poetic?" Adrian's gaze hardened, but there was something else beneath the fury. Confusion, attraction, something he didn't want to name. He leaned in closer, his lips almost brushing Leo's ear. "You're hiding something, and you're bleeding on my hands," Leo whispered. They stayed like that, suspended in the electric silence between hate and hunger, until the sound of sirens broke the spell. Leo pulled away, standing quickly, the mask sliding back over his face. Adrian followed, slower, his eyes never leaving him. "You saved my life," he said. "Don't read too much into it," Leo replied, slipping his gloves back on. "I just didn't want to explain your death to the board." But when he turned to leave, Adrian's voice stopped him, calm, sharp, laced with something unspoken. "You smell like rain," Adrian said softly, "and old blood." Leo froze, every muscle going still. He didn't turn around, just smirked faintly, letting the rain hide his expression. "Maybe you're remembering ghosts again, Mr. Vale." But deep down, Leo's pulse was pounding, because for the first time, Adrian wasn't imagining it. He was remembering. It began with the smallest of things. A turn of phrase, a flicker of expression, a ghost hiding in plain sight. Adrian Vale had built his empire on instincts sharper than blades, and yet, when it came to Leo, logic faltered. Something about the man didn't fit. Too composed, too familiar. That night, in his private office overlooking the city, Adrian watched the rain smear the glass, the same rain that had once fallen over Riven's body. He hated how memory crept in uninvited, whispering through the cracks of his mind. Riven was dead. He had pulled the trigger himself. He had seen him fall. And yet, Leo's voice haunted him, low, deliberate, laced with a tone Adrian hadn't heard in years. The way he said certain words, the way his fingers tapped twice on the table when deep in thought, the way he flinched ever so slightly when someone loaded a gun nearby, all of it screamed of a past Adrian had buried. When Leo entered the room that evening, crisp in his black shirt and gloves, Adrian didn't look up from his whiskey. "You were late," he said. "There was traffic," Leo replied smoothly. "You don't take roads that have traffic," Adrian countered, eyes finally lifting to meet his. Leo froze for a fraction of a second, just enough for Adrian to notice. The silence that followed was thick, like the air before a storm. Adrian stood, circling him slowly. "I've been watching you," he said. "You move like a man trained by ghosts. You think like someone who's lost everything. And you fight like you've already died once." Leo's jaw tightened. "Are you accusing me of something, boss?" "I'm not sure yet." Adrian stepped closer until he could see his own reflection in Leo's dark eyes. "But I know those eyes. I've seen them before. In someone I killed." For a moment, the mask slipped. Leo's hand twitched near his belt, instinctively reaching for a knife that wasn't there. His breath hitched, too sharp, too human. Adrian's voice dropped to a whisper. "You have his scar." Leo's pulse thundered in his throat. "Coincidence," he said, but it sounded like a plea. Adrian tilted his head, studying him like a puzzle. "No." Riven's scar was just above his heart. "I should know. I put it there." The words hit like a bullet. The room was suddenly too small, too loud with memories. Leo turned away, every muscle in his body screaming to stay calm. "Why are you so obsessed with the dead?" he asked quietly. Adrian's answer came like a knife slipping between ribs. "Because the dead won't stop haunting me." The silence that followed was unbearable. Leo's mask cracked just a little, enough for pain to bleed through. Adrian saw it, and something inside him twisted. He reached out, fingers brushing the hem of Leo's sleeve, and felt the faint ridges of an old burn scar beneath the fabric. The same burn Riven had gotten the night they tried to escape together, long before betrayal tore them apart. Leo stepped back sharply, breaking contact. "If you keep digging up ghosts, Mr. Vale," he said, voice trembling with quiet warning, "you might find one that still remembers how to kill you." Adrian smiled faintly, though his eyes burned. "Then let him come for me." As Leo left the office, the mirror on Adrian's desk cracked from the pressure of his fist. Blood trickled down his knuckles, bright against the reflection. Two faces overlapping. His and Riven's. The past wasn't dead. It was standing right in front of him, breathing his air, wearing another man's name. And Adrian Vale, for the first time in years, didn't know whether to kill it or beg it to stay. The power had gone out in the manor that night. Only the flicker of candlelight remained, soft gold bleeding through darkness, dancing across polished glass and shadows. Adrian Vale stood by the window, a half-empty glass of whiskey in his hand, waiting. He had sent for Leo personally, his voice on the phone calm but edged with something lethal. When Leo entered, the air seemed to shift, too quiet, too heavy. He stopped at the threshold, eyes darting once to the table, to the wine, to the gun lying beside it. His instincts whispered trap, but his pride refused to show fear. "You called for me, boss?" Adrian didn't answer immediately. He watched him, every movement, every breath, as if studying a reflection in fractured glass. The candlelight caught on Leo's features, the sharp jawline, the faint shadow of a scar near his collarbone, and those eyes, steady, defiant, yet trembling with something unspoken. "Sit," Adrian finally said. His tone was smooth, but the command carried iron. Leo obeyed, lowering himself into the chair across from him. Adrian set the glass down and leaned forward, his gaze cutting through the flame between them. "Tell me," he said softly, "what were you before I found you?" Leo's lips curved faintly. "Does it matter?" "It does," Adrian murmured. Because you move like a ghost I can't bury. The words hung between them, dangerous and intimate. Leo's fingers twitched against the table, slow, deliberate. He could feel Adrian's suspicion like a knife pressed against his throat. Riven is dead, Leo said finally. His voice didn't shake, but something in it cracked, the faintest fracture of truth bleeding through. Adrian smiled darkly. That's what I keep hearing. Yet here you are, bleeding the same lies he once did. He stood, circling behind Leo, his footsteps soft against the marble floor. The scent of rain and gunpowder seemed to follow him even indoors. When he reached Leo's chair, he bent low, his breath warm against his ear. You even sound like him, Adrian said. The same arrogance, the same fire. He paused, voice dropping lower. Tell me the truth, and I'll forgive the past. Lie to me again, and I'll end you myself. Silence. The only sound was the soft crackle of the candles. Then Leo turned his head slightly, just enough for their eyes to meet. The flame between them flickered, and for a heartbeat, the world stopped. Do you want the truth, Adrian? Leo asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Yes. Leo's lips curved into the faintest, saddest smile. I'm not him. The lie slid out smooth and deliberate, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. Adrian's jaw clenched. He stepped back, eyes burning with anger and disbelief. Then why do you look at me like that? He hissed. Like what? Like you're the one who died, and I'm the one who pulled the trigger. For a moment, neither of them moved. The air between them thickened, a tension so raw it felt alive. Then Adrian grabbed his collar, pulling him up roughly. Their faces were inches apart, breath against breath, fury against longing. Tell me I'm wrong, Adrian growled. Leo's hand came up, trembling slightly, pressing against Adrian's chest where the heartbeat thundered beneath his suit. You want to believe in ghosts, Adrian, he whispered. But I'm not here to haunt you. Adrian's fingers tightened on his jaw, and then, without thought, he kissed him. It wasn't gentle. It was punishment and confession in one violent motion. Lips colliding, years of guilt and grief igniting like fire. Leo froze for a second, torn between the instinct to pull away and the ache that told him he never wanted to. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. The candle between them had burned low, wax spilling like tears onto the table. Adrian's voice was rough when he spoke. If you're not Riven, then why does every part of me remember you? Leo didn't answer. He simply turned away, wiping a streak of wax from his palm. Maybe you're just remembering who you used to be, he said quietly. Adrian watched him leave, the door closing softly behind him, and felt something in him fracture for good. Because the taste of that kiss told him the truth no words ever could. Leo was lying. Riven was alive. Sleep refused to come that night. Adrian Vale sat in his darkened penthouse, the city glittering far below like 1,000 sins reflected in glass. His shirt was unbuttoned, sleeves rolled up, whiskey untouched beside him. Every time he closed his eyes, he could still feel the ghost of Leo's lips, the warmth, the tremor, the lie. He had kissed the man he killed, and it didn't make sense. Nothing about Leo made sense. He reached for his phone and made the call. Find everything you can about him, Adrian said, voice low. Background, origin, training, records. I want to know who Leo really is, and what he's hiding. Yes, sir, came the reply from his most trusted operative, Dante. But if he's using forged IDs, it'll take time. Then start with his scars, Adrian muttered, glancing at the reflection in the glass. His own face half-shadowed, fractured like his thoughts. Every scar has a story. Find me his. When morning came, Leo was already at the training compound, as if nothing had happened. He fought like a machine, silent, focused, deadly. But his movements lacked precision today, weighed down by something unseen. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Adrian's face inches from his own, felt that kiss like a wound reopening. Boss is asking for you, one of the guards said. Leo nodded, hiding the tremor in his hands. He had spent years preparing for this, lying, training, becoming someone else. But nothing in those years prepared him for the way his heart still reacted to the man who'd shot him. When he entered Adrian's office, the mood was different, colder, sharper. Files were scattered across the table, the faint smell of smoke and whiskey in the air. Adrian didn't look up immediately. "I've been going through your records," Adrian said, his voice calm but razor-edged. "You're quite a mystery, Leo. No birth records, no official training background, no family ties." He lifted his gaze, eyes dark. "You appeared 3 years ago, out of nowhere, with a spotless resume and skills too refined to be coincidence." Leo met his gaze steadily. "Maybe I prefer to live without chains. Or maybe you're running from them," Adrian countered. The silence between them pulsed with tension. Leo forced a faint smirk. "You think I'm some ghost come back to haunt you?" Adrian's eyes flickered. "I don't believe in ghosts. I believe in men who crawl out of graves to finish what they started." For a second, everything inside Leo stilled. "He's getting too close." Adrian stood, walking toward him, slowly, like a predator closing in. He stopped inches away. "Where did you get that scar on your chest?" Leo didn't blink. "A bullet. Wrong place, wrong time." "Funny?" Adrian murmured, his gaze sharp as glass. "That's exactly how Riven died." Leo's heart stopped. Adrian leaned closer, his breath ghosting over Leo's skin. "You can hide your name. You can change your face. But the eyes, they don't forget." Leo's jaw tightened. "You want me to be your ghost, Adrian? Fine. But ghosts don't bleed." He grabbed Adrian's wrist suddenly, twisting it hard enough to make the older man hiss, but not enough to break. "If I were Riven," Leo whispered, eyes glinting with cold fury, "wouldn't you already be dead?" The moment stretched, raw, dangerous, intimate. Then Leo released him, stepping back. "Stop chasing the dead," he said quietly. "It doesn't suit you." Adrian didn't stop him this time as Leo turned and walked out. But the moment the door closed, his phone buzzed on the table. It was Dante. "Boss!" His voice crackled through the line. "We found something. The hospital where Leo's supposed records begin, it doesn't exist. But there is a closed file from 6 years ago. A man admitted under a different name, matching Leo's blood type and build. He was shot in the chest and listed as deceased." Adrian's breath caught. "Name?" "Rivan Hale." For a moment the world stopped. The sound of rain returned, like the night of the murder. Adrian sank into his chair, knuckles white against the phone. So it was true. He had killed Riven. And yet Riven was alive. Not a ghost. Not a memory. A man, reborn, furious, and close enough to kill him again. Adrian let out a dark, hollow laugh. "So that's your game, my love," he whispered to the empty room. "You came back from the dead to finish what I started." He poured himself another drink and stared into the amber liquid. "Then let's see who dies this time." The rain came again that night. Heavy, relentless, washing the city in silver and gunfire. The meeting at the docks had turned into an ambush before anyone could blink. Screams and bullets collided with thunder as Adrian's men fell one by one, swallowed by chaos. Leo was already moving. Instinct, not loyalty, drove him, or maybe something darker. He'd promised himself he would never save Adrian Vale again. Yet when he saw the muzzle flash aimed at that familiar silhouette, his body disobeyed. He lunged. The bullet meant for Adrian tore across his own arm, a searing pain that barely registered. Leo slammed the attacker into a crate, disarming him with practiced precision, eyes wild with fury. Blood smeared across his sleeve, but he didn't stop, didn't even breathe. Adrian turned, stunned for a heartbeat. "Leo, move!" Leo barked, grabbing his shoulder, dragging him toward the back alley as another wave of gunfire cut through the night. They ducked behind a rusted car, breaths harsh and uneven. Adrian reached for his gun, but his hand brushed Leo's bleeding arm. "You're hit." "I've had worse," Leo muttered, reloading his weapon. His tone was cold, but his pulse betrayed him, wild and loud. The attackers regrouped in the distance. The air smelled like oil, blood, and something that shouldn't have been there. Tension. thick and electric. Why did you do that? Adrian asked suddenly. His voice was low, unreadable. Leo didn't look at him. Because I need you alive to finish what I started. Adrian gave a bitter laugh. And what's that? My empire, or me? Leo's grip tightened on his gun. Don't flatter yourself. But his words lacked conviction. Adrian leaned closer, eyes gleaming in the dim light. You could have let me die. But you didn't. Tell me why. Because you're my job, Leo snapped. Liar. The word cut deeper than the bullet had. Leo's heart slammed against his ribs. You don't know anything about me.
Och, Ido, Adrian whispered.
I know the way you flinch when thunder hits. I know the scar over your heart and the sound of your voice when you lie. I know because I remember the night I put that scar there. The world froze. The rain seemed to stop midair. Leo turned to face him, eyes burning. Not with rage, but with something broken. Then why are you still breathing? He asked. Adrian smiled, faint, tragic. Because you don't hate me as much as you want to. Leo's hand trembled on the trigger. He should have shot him. Ended it. Finished what death had started years ago. But he couldn't. The past and the present were tangled too tightly. Blood, love, betrayal, all bleeding into one. A sudden explosion rocked the ground, snapping them both back to reality. Adrian shoved Leo behind cover just as debris rained down. Stay with me, he yelled. Leo coughed, clutching his arm. You're giving orders now? I always give orders. Despite the chaos, a small, bitter laugh escaped Leo's lips. Some things never change. When the last shots died out, both men were bleeding, bruised, alive barely. Leo slumped against a wall, watching the smoke drift across the ruins. Adrian stood over him, chest heaving, eyes softening against his will. Next time, Adrian said quietly, don't get in front of a bullet for me. Leo's gaze lifted, defiant, tired, and full of something neither of them dared name. Next time, he murmured. Don't make me want to. The sirens grew louder in the distance. But neither of them moved. The war wasn't over. It had only just begun between the empire outside and the battlefield inside their hearts. The manor sat high above the city, a fortress of steel, marble, and secrets. Adrian Vale's empire was built there. Elegant, immaculate, and always under control. Yet tonight, as Leo stepped through its echoing halls, it felt more like a cage than a palace. He had tried to refuse the offer. He didn't need protection, and certainly not his protection. But Adrian had made it sound like a command, not a choice. You'll stay here until I'm sure the attack source is gone, he had said, voice steady but eyes betraying something else. Something Leo didn't want to see. Now, Leo's reflection followed him in every mirrored wall. The ghost of a man who should have stayed dead. He passed portraits of Adrian's ancestors, all stern faces and hollow eyes, staring down at him like judges of sins he hadn't yet confessed. At the far end of the corridor, Adrian waited. He was dressed simply for once. No suit jacket, sleeves rolled to his forearms, the top buttons of his shirt undone. The sight should have meant nothing. Instead, it made Leo's heartbeat stumble in his chest. You look uneasy, Adrian said, watching him. I don't like glass walls, Leo replied, scanning the room. Too many reflections. Too many ways to be seen. Adrian smirked faintly. I built this house to watch people, not hide from them. Of course you did. Their eyes met, sharp, silent, full of the ghosts that refused to rest. Adrian gestured toward the grand staircase. I'll have a room prepared for you upstairs. You'll be safer here. Leo's lips twisted. You're not keeping me here like some pet. Adrian stepped closer, the low amber light catching in his eyes. Don't mistake safety for ownership, he said softly. If I wanted to own you, you'd already know. The air between them grew heavier, a fine thread stretched tight. Leo broke it first, turning away. You talk too much, Vale. And you hide too well, Adrian murmured, following him with his gaze. That's the problem. Later that night, the storm came again. Leo couldn't sleep. He stood by the balcony, looking over the city lights far below. His arm still burned from the wound, but it wasn't the pain keeping him awake. It was Adrian's nearness. The way his voice still lingered, soft and cold. A quiet knock came at the door. Before Leo could answer, Adrian stepped in, uninvited, but expected. "You're bleeding again," Adrian said. Leo turned his head slightly. "You came all the way here to play doctor?" "No," Adrian replied, walking closer. "I came because I can't stop seeing your face every time I close my eyes." Leo's chest tightened. He wanted to laugh, to mock, to distance, to destroy whatever thread tied them together. But he couldn't. Not with Adrian standing so close, eyes burning with something raw and desperate. Adrian reached out, slow, hesitant, and brushed his fingers against the bandage on Leo's arm. "You should let it heal," he said. Leo's voice was barely a whisper. "Some wounds never do." Adrian's hand lingered, tracing down his forearm, stopping just above the pulse that betrayed him. "Riven," he breathed. Leo froze. The name hit like a gunshot. He turned sharply, eyes flashing. "Don't." Adrian didn't move back. "How long were you planning to keep pretending?" Leo's throat went dry. "Long enough to make you pay." Silence. Then Adrian smiled, but it wasn't cruel this time. It was something far worse. "Then do it," he whispered. "Kill me, if that's what you came for." Leo stepped closer until their faces were inches apart, his voice trembling. "You think death will fix what you broke?" Adrian's reply came soft, almost like a confession. "No, but maybe you can." For a long moment, neither spoke. The candlelight flickered between them, shadows and warmth shifting across their faces like ghosts dancing on broken glass. Leo could have walked away. He should have. But his hand rose instead, not to strike, but to touch. His fingers brushed against Adrian's cheek, feeling the warmth of life beneath skin that should have been his enemy's. "Be careful what you wish for," Leo whispered. "You might fall for your ghost." Adrian caught his wrist, holding it in place. "Maybe I already did." Outside, thunder cracked. Inside, the fragile glass walls of their hatred began to splinter. Neither man noticed the shadow watching them from the hall. A loyal guard turned traitor, phone in hand, recording what could destroy them both. The underworld didn't forgive softness. And love, especially this kind, was the most dangerous secret of all. The night air was thick with rain. Heavy, relentless, and strangely alive. It drummed against the glass walls of Adrian's manor like a warning. Inside, the silence was more dangerous than any storm. By morning, everything had changed. Leo woke to the sharp buzz of Adrian's phone vibrating on the nightstand. The message glowed in the dark room. "Your secret is out." He grabbed it before Adrian could reach for it, eyes scanning the words again. "What the hell does this mean?" Adrian sat up, expression darkening. "It means someone's seen us." Leo froze. His stomach turned to ice. "Seen us?" Adrian pulled up the video. There it was, grainy footage from the security hall. Him and Leo, standing close under the flickering candlelight. The moment their walls had cracked, the moment Leo's hand had brushed Adrian's face. It wasn't explicit, but it was enough. Enough to ruin them both. Adrian's voice was low and dangerous. "Only 3 people have access to that floor's surveillance feed." Leo stepped back, jaw tightening. "Then one of them just sold you." "Us," Adrian corrected, his tone bitter. "They sold us." The weight of that word hung between them, us. Something they'd never dared to claim until now. Within hours, the underworld was alive with whispers. Screenshots, threats, and blackmail offers flooded Adrian's encrypted channels. His rivals had waited years for a weakness, and now they had one. Not financial, not political, but personal. Love, the cruelest leverage of all. "We need to go," Leo said, grabbing his jacket. "You can't stay here. They'll come for you first." Adrian didn't argue. He only looked at him with a strange calm, the kind that comes after the storm has already hit. "You're the one they'll target. You're the ghost who shouldn't exist." "Then maybe we disappear together," Leo shot back. Their eyes met, fire and restraint, guilt and longing. For once, there was no mask left between them. By sunset, the manor stood empty. Adrian's empire, the glass palace he built to see everything, now became the perfect trap for anyone left behind. They fled through the old tunnels beneath the city, a forgotten network once used to move contraband, now their only lifeline. The scent of damp stone and oil filled the air. "Where are we going?" Adrian asked. "Somewhere they won't look," Leo said, his voice steady. "The South Docks. There's an old shipyard. My contact owes me a favor." Adrian's mouth curved slightly. "You always have a contact. And you always have enemies," Leo muttered. "It balances out." They walked in silence for a while, the faint light from Leo's flashlight cutting through the darkness. Every few steps, Adrian would glance at him. The same man he once hunted, the same one he now trusted more than anyone alive. At one point, Leo stumbled over loose debris. Adrian caught his arm instinctively. The touch lingered, too long, too soft. "Careful," Adrian whispered. Leo's reply was quiet, almost bitter. "You don't get to care. I don't get to stop," Adrian said. The tunnel curved sharply, opening into a narrow underground chamber. Leo stopped, sensing something. He reached for his gun, too late. A click echoed from the shadows. From the far end, a figure stepped forward, the traitor. "Evening, gentlemen," the man said, smirking. "You didn't think you could hide forever, did you?" Leo raised his weapon. "Drop it, now." But the traitor only laughed. "Oh, I'm not here to fight. I'm here to offer a deal." He held up a phone, the same one that had recorded them. "Give me the codes to Vale Industries, and I'll delete the footage. Otherwise," Adrian's jaw tightened. "You think you can blackmail me?" The man grinned wider. "Not you, Vale. Him." He turned his gaze to Leo. "Because you see, I know who you really are. Riven Kane, the assassin who vanished after killing Adrian's brother." The words hit like shrapnel. Adrian's breath caught. He turned slowly toward Leo, disbelief flooding his eyes. "Tell me he's lying." Leo said nothing. His silence was answer enough. Adrian's world fractured in that instant. Every touch, every glance, every word replaying in his mind under a new, darker light. "You killed him," Adrian whispered. "You killed my brother. And you stood here in my house. It wasn't supposed to be him." Leo cut in, voice raw. "He wasn't the target. It was you." The traitor laughed. "Beautiful, isn't it? Revenge dressed up as love." Before he could finish, Leo fired. The shot echoed, and the man fell, phone shattering across the wet stone. Silence. Then the weight of truth returned, heavier than any bullet. Adrian looked at Leo, eyes full of rage and something far more painful. "You should have finished the job." Leo lowered his gun, his voice barely holding steady. "Maybe I did. Maybe killing you would have been easier than loving you." Neither moved. Only the rain echoed from somewhere above, as if the world itself mourned what they just destroyed. Far above, the manor's glass walls shattered one by one under the storm's force, reflecting the only truth left between them. Some betrayals bloom like flowers, beautiful, fatal, and impossible to forget. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. It was as if the sky itself refused to forgive them. The city burned behind them, flames curling through the glass skeleton of Adrian's empire, consuming everything that once defined power, loyalty, and pride. Now only 2 men remained, the ghost and the king. Leo drove in silence, his knuckles white around the steering wheel. Adrian sat beside him, staring out the window, his reflection fractured in the glass. Between them, the air felt sharp, heavy with everything unspoken. The gunshot, the confession, the truth that had destroyed them both. Finally, Adrian spoke. "How long were you planning to lie to me?" Leo didn't answer. The road was narrow and slick, and maybe that was why he didn't turn to meet Adrian's eyes. Or maybe he simply couldn't bear to. "You could have told me," Adrian said again, quieter this time. "You should have told me." "And said what?" Leo snapped. "That the man you loved once put a bullet in your brother's chest?" That I crawled out of my grave just to bring you down. His voice cracked on the last words. Would you have forgiven that, Adrian? Adrian's gaze hardened, but his voice betrayed him.
No.
But at least I would have known what was real. Leo exhaled shakily. Everything was real. The silence that followed was worse than any argument. It was filled with ghosts, of who they were and what they'd become. They stopped near the docks, the smell of salt and rust thick in the air. The shipyard stretched before them like a graveyard of steel. Forgotten vessels, their hulls groaning in the wind. This is where it ends, Leo murmured. Adrian got out of the car, boots splashing through puddles. For you, maybe. Leo followed, rain soaking his hair and clothes. You think you can still fix this? They'll hunt you. They already know about us. Adrian turned, eyes burning with something raw and furious. Then let them come. He stepped closer, close enough that the rain ran down their faces together. I lost my brother because of you. I lost my name, my empire, everything. But I can't lose you too. The words struck like fire through frost. For a moment, Leo wanted to believe him, wanted to throw everything away and start over. But the past clung to them like blood that wouldn't wash off. You don't get to say that, Leo said softly. Not when the man I loved died the night you shot me. Adrian flinched, the truth hitting harder than any bullet. His voice broke. I didn't know, Riven. I swear. Don't, Leo interrupted, shaking his head. That name doesn't belong to me anymore. Adrian reached out anyway, gripping his arm. You're still him, no matter what name you wear. Leo tried to pull away, but then the gunfire started. The sound shattered the air. Muzzle flashes burst through the darkness as shadows moved between the broken ships. Adrian reacted first, pulling Leo behind cover as bullets struck metal. They found us, Leo hissed, checking his weapon. No, Adrian said, loading his own gun. They found me. The underworld never forgave weakness, and love was the greatest weakness of all. His enemies had followed them here to end it, the ghost and the king, together in their ruin. The fight was brutal and fast. Leo moved like smoke, silent and deadly. Adrian fought beside him, every shot precise, cold, and desperate. But there were too many. A bullet tore through Leo's side. He stumbled, gasping, blood spilling hot between his fingers. Leo! Adrian shouted, catching him before he fell. Leo gritted his teeth. Go. Finish it. I'm not leaving you again. Adrian stood, firing until the last echo faded. Bodies lay scattered across the dock, rain washing their blood into the sea. Then silence, broken only by the rasp of Leo's breathing. Adrian dropped beside him, pressing his hands to the wound. Stay with me. You hear me? Leo's lips curved faintly. I told you once. Death doesn't want me. His voice was weak but steady. Maybe it wants you instead. Don't you dare, Adrian whispered. You don't get to die twice. Leo's eyes fluttered, pain and sorrow mingling in his gaze. You still don't understand. I never wanted revenge, Adrian. I just wanted you to remember who killed me. Adrian froze, heart breaking under the weight of those words. Then Leo's hand slipped from his grasp. For a long moment, all Adrian could do was stare. At the blood, the rain, the man who had come back from death just to love him one last time. He pressed his forehead against Leo's and whispered, Then let me die with you. But fate, cruel as ever, wouldn't grant him that mercy. Sirens wailed in the distance. The docks burned behind them, and as Adrian lifted Leo in his arms, the storm swallowed them whole. Two shadows vanishing into the night, leaving only ashes behind. The night refused to end. The rain still fell, slow and endless, as if mourning him, the man who died twice in Adrian's arms. Adrian didn't remember how he got Leo back to the safe house. The drive was a blur of sirens and blood, his hands shaking on the wheel, his heart numb with terror. He kicked the door open with his shoulder, carrying Leo like he weighed nothing, laying him gently on the couch. The dim light flickered across Leo's face, pale, bruised, hauntingly beautiful even in pain. Stay with me? Adrian whispered, pressing against the wound. You're not leaving again. Leo didn't answer. His breath came shallow and uneven. The bullet hadn't gone straight through. It was lodged deep, cruelly placed. Adrian tore open a med kit, working with the urgency of a man trying to fix the unfixable. His hands were steady, but his heart was in ruins. When the bleeding slowed, he sat beside him, soaked and shaking. The scent of iron and rain filled the air. For a long while, he just stared at Leo's face, at the faint scar under his lip, the one he used to kiss absent-mindedly before sleep. He whispered, "You shouldn't have come back for me." A faint sound escaped Leo's lips, not quite a laugh, not quite a sigh. "You would have done the same." Adrian let out a breath that was half a sob. "No," he said. "I would have let the world burn first." Leo's eyes flickered open, barely. It already did. Outside, thunder rolled like a funeral drum. Inside, Adrian wrapped the blanket tighter around him and leaned back against the couch, exhaustion dragging at his bones. Every shadow in the room looked alive, whispering the same question. "What have you done?" Hours passed. The bleeding stopped. The night grew colder. Leo slept, or maybe drifted somewhere between life and death, and Adrian sat in the quiet ruin of his choices. He thought of their first meeting, the boy with storm eyes and a reckless smile who'd walked into his world like a spark to gasoline. He'd hated how a live riven made him feel, how much he'd wanted someone he should have destroyed. And when he'd pulled that trigger years ago, he thought he'd finally killed the weakness inside him. But now, seeing Leo riven, breathing in his arms again, Adrian realized the truth. He hadn't killed his weakness. He'd fallen in love with it. At dawn, Leo stirred. His voice was hoarse, cracked. "Why are you still here?" Adrian looked at him, really looked, and said quietly, "Because if you die, there's nothing left of me." Leo's lips parted in disbelief, but he couldn't find words. Adrian brushed damp hair from his forehead, his fingers trembling. "You think I didn't know? That something about you wasn't right? From the moment you walked into my office, those eyes, the way you said my name, I knew I'd seen you before. I just couldn't believe it. I didn't want you to," Leo murmured. "I wanted you to hate me. It would have been easier." Adrian smiled faintly, brokenly. "Then you've never known me. I don't do easy." Silence fell again. The light through the window turned gold, touching the wreckage of the night. Leo tried to sit up but winced, his hand pressing the bandage. "You should go," he whispered. "They'll find you if you stay." Adrian shook his head. "Let them. You'll lose everything." Adrian's gaze softened. "I already did, the moment I pulled that trigger." Something inside Leo broke then, the wall he'd built with vengeance and lies. Tears he didn't know he still had burned his eyes. "You're a fool," he whispered. Adrian leaned closer, his voice barely a breath. "Only for you." For a long moment they said nothing, their faces inches apart, rain light catching between them. The world outside could burn again, and neither would care. But fate, cruel and watchful, was not done with them. Because outside the safe house, engines rumbled. The sound of heavy boots on gravel. Shadows moving with guns drawn. Adrian froze, his instincts snapping back. "They found us." Leo's eyes widened, panic flashing through pain. "You have to go." Adrian loaded his weapon. "Not this time." He turned to Leo, voice low and fierce. "I won't lose you again. Not to them, not to death." Leo reached for him, fingers brushing his sleeve. "Adrian." But he was already at the door, already stepping into the dawn where enemies waited. The king was going to war for his ghost, and this time he didn't care if it killed him. The dawn was cold, pale, and merciless. Mist hung over the shipyard like the breath of ghosts, and Adrian Vale walked into it with a gun in his hand and death in his eyes. Behind him, the safe house's door stood half open, a fragile line between the man he used to be and the monster he had become. The sound of boots echoed in the fog. Shadows moved between the metal skeletons of abandoned ships, rifles raised. Adrian counted the steps, the breaths, the soft metallic clicks of safeties being released. They were surrounding him, just as he expected. "Come out, Vale," a voice called, smooth and cruel. "You've been a hard man to kill." Adrian's lips curved into a humorless smile. "You should have tried harder." He stepped forward, and the mist seemed to part around him. The men hesitated. Something about his calm, his defiance, the look of a man who had nothing left to lose. "Where's the ghost?" the leader demanded. "The one you're hiding."
Quem sont?
Riven, or whatever name he goes by now. Adrian's voice was quiet, deadly. "He's not your concern." The man laughed. "Oh, he is. The council wants him alive. The last of the Kane bloodline has debts to pay." Adrian's finger tightened on the trigger. "Then tell your council to collect them from me." He fired before the man could respond. The shot cracked through the fog like thunder. Chaos erupted, muzzle flashes lighting the mist in bursts of orange and red. Adrian moved like a shadow, precise and silent. Every step, every bullet was vengeance made flesh. Back inside, Leo forced himself up. Pain ripped through his body, but he ignored it. He could hear the gunfire, the echo of a war he had started and couldn't bear to end. He pulled himself to his feet, one hand gripping the wall, blood blooming through the bandage at his side. When he stumbled out into the open, the scene before him blurred bodies, smoke, the metallic tang of blood and rain. And there, in the middle of it all, stood Adrian, firing his last bullet into the fog as the final attacker fell. Then silence. Leo limped toward him, calling his name. "Adrian." Adrian turned, and for a moment relief flashed in his eyes. Then the faintest movement caught his attention. A gun raised behind Leo, one last survivor aiming for his back. "Leo!" The shot rang out. Leo froze, then looked down. Blood spread across his chest, dark and shimmering in the pale light. Behind him, the gunman collapsed. Adrian's bullet lodged in his skull. But it was too late. The bullet meant for Leo had already found its mark. Adrian caught him before he fell.
No.
"No, stay with me." Leo's hand gripped his coat weakly. His eyes were glassy, unfocused, but there was peace in them, the kind that comes only when all the fighting is done. "I told you," he whispered. "Death doesn't want me. Don't you dare." Adrian breathed, voice breaking. "Don't you dare leave me again." Leo smiled faintly. "Then come with me." Adrian's heart shattered. He pressed his forehead against Leo's, whispering all the words he'd never said.
"I'm sorry."
"For everything. For that night. For killing you. For not dying with you." "You did," Leo murmured. "The moment you pulled that trigger." He coughed, blood staining his lips. "But you brought me back. And I loved you for it." Adrian shook his head, tears burning his eyes. "Don't you say that. You don't get to forgive me." "Then hate me," Leo said softly. "But don't forget me." His voice faded, his fingers slipping from Adrian's grasp. And then, there was nothing but the sound of the sea calm, endless, merciless. Adrian held him long after the sirens began to rise again. He didn't run this time. He didn't hide. When the lights appeared in the fog and the soldiers surrounded him, he simply sat there with Leo in his arms. The king cradling his ghost, the monster cradling what was left of his humanity. He looked up at the officers, eyes hollow but steady. "He wasn't the villain," he said quietly. "I was." They dragged him away, the gun falling from his hand, clattering against the wet concrete. Behind them, the mist closed over the bodies, over the blood, over the love that had burned too bright to last. Weeks later, rumors spread through the underworld. Whispers that the King of Vale had vanished in transit. Some said he escaped. Others said he was executed. But on stormy nights, the docks would fill with strange lights. A figure in black, standing by the water's edge, talking softly to the sea as if to someone only he could see. And sometimes, if the wind was right, you could hear it. A voice answering back. "I told you death doesn't want me."